Thank you. Firstly, I'm hoping this is working all right. I was disappointed that David didn't sing earlier because he looks so much like Madonna when he was performing. The other thing too is about leptospirosis. When we were talking about things about vaccinating, I've actually had leptospirosis, and one of the things they didn't mention up there about the impact on health is that it actually attacks your vital organs as well. Your liver, your kidneys and those sort of things. And so as a result of having that, I can't drink alcohol anymore. So if that doesn't frighten the bejesus out of you, nothing will. So make sure you be careful of that. So out of the square, it was more out of the box. It's more about thinking about marketing our livestock before they become something in a box, before they become what we've been talking about the first thing this morning. I think the way the industry's moved in the last 20 years has been amazing. It is very hard now to go in to a butcher shop or to a restaurant and get a bad piece of meat. 20 years ago, we always had that fear that if we were entertaining and we actually had to buy the meat, that it was actually going to eat okay. And I think the industry has come a long way, and that's all of us. That's producers, that's the marketers, it's the MLA, the MSA, all of that, working together to create great changes in the industry. But we're going to talk about what we as producers, I'm a producer like Max, that's what we do, and part of our marketing often seems so removed from what we actually do at home. So much of the talk about whether things are grading or what markets we're aiming for are very different to what we're actually doing at home. And one of those things is that we actually are grass producers. And it's how well we sell that grass that determines our profitability. It's all good, as Mac's saying, like to get rewarded on the grids, get paid those premiums, and we hope that comes. What we really want to do is stay in business long enough until that actually happens. And so that's where KLR works. We go back to looking about how we market our grass, the animals that eat that grass, and we talk about balancing our inventories of grass, money and livestock. Now, the ideas came from a fellow by the name of Bud Williams. Now, Bud came out here back in the late 90s running a series of stock handling courses. And I went along because I thought, oh, well, obviously we have to have an international expert, somebody else to talk to. There's no one here that could do this. Anyway, I went along and I did. I learned a whole lot from Bud. What I didn't realise is that there were some pretty good stock handlers here in Australia as well, and Jim Lindsay's one of them. But one of the things I learned from Bud was his ability to look at things totally differently. His ability to actually read animals and get a whole lot of information out of them and then react accordingly and see how they react to us. So when Bud started talking about this marketing process that he was using, I became very interested in it because I knew it would be different to anything else that we'd been taught, anything else that we'd talked about. And so I went over and spent some time with Bud, and I guess we had to adapt it, bring it back to Australian conditions and those sort of things, and that's what we've done. But the three of us that make up KLR Marketing, Jim Lindsay, Graham Rees and myself, Graham is no longer a producer, but Jim and I are full-time producers. We've been using this stuff inside our own businesses for nearly 20 years now, and we do not make a decision about our marketing without using the process. There's 5 basic principles. The first one is balancing the inventories of grass, money and livestock, as I mentioned before. The second one is thinking about every day we sell by. That doesn't mean you're going to the market every day, but every day you make a decision not to sell something. You've just bought it, you've sold grass out of your grass inventory to that animal. Was that a good trade? Was that a good decision to make? Know the price relationship between what we have to sell and what we can buy today. And that price relationship may be the price relationship of grass relative to animals. And that's something that we normally don't think of. It's something that Bud had taught us to think about. The grass has a value. It costs us a certain amount to produce it. There's some other things in there, and there's also a cost of time. The animal, the longer it is there, the more cost it has on you. So it's an important factor to know what that price relationship between grass is and livestock themselves. Once you've determined that, you simply sell what is overpriced and buy what is underpriced. And from a breeding perspective, that will be your next drop of calves, your next progeny, those sort of things that are there is your buy. And finally, know and understand yourself, because you can have all the information in the world, but of course, if you don't know how you're going to react to that, then you've really got no possibility of making a decision. So I want to just touch on balancing the inventories of grass, money and livestock, because I think considering the climatic conditions that we've been through over the past 4 or 5 years, this becomes very significant from a profitability for producers' perspective. On one side we put the grass and the money, and on the other side we put livestock. And keeping that in balance is one of the biggest challenges we have as producers. Because when things get out of balance like that, and I know it wouldn't happen for any of you guys, but you would have seen your neighbours probably a bit out of balance, not a lot of grass, not a lot of money and too many livestock. The simple thing is probably to put it back into balance is turn some of those livestock into money and move them back onto the money side, and also buy some grass back in and bring our inventory back into balance. Why do we get out of balance? Why do we have more stock than we have grass for? Anyone tell me? Why does that happen to us? You can blame the rain, of course. You can blame the weather. Often the most difficult thing we come up with as producers is understanding, because $3 a kilo on the way back down is never as good as it was on the way up. We tend to hold on to animals because we want the price to get better than it was last time. And the reality is, of course, is the market moves up and down all the time, and we have to really maintain that as a focus. We hang on trying to get that $3, or we won't take the $3 because it wasn't as good as the $3.50 that was around a few months earlier, and we get further and further out of balance. We run out of grass, and the money pot's getting smaller and smaller. And again, it mightn't be you guys, but you might know some other people in the game who might be in that situation. And then they end up in no balance. And as one fella said to me, oh, well, if you leave them there long enough, they'll die and fall off the end, and then it'll come back into balance. So what stops us from destocking? One of the other things that we struggle with as producers is we're frightened to destock. We're frightened to sell the animals. Why are we frightened to sell them? What are we frightened of? It might rain and the price might go up. So that's the stuff we're frightened of. Okay, now just think about that for a minute. Okay, we're frightened of rain. We live on the world's biggest barbecue, and we've just made rain as our biggest risk. Doesn't make any sense, does it? Okay, what is our biggest risk? That it won't rain. Okay, so one of the reasons we hold on to animals too long is that we're frightened it's going to rain and the price is going to go up. So there's a few things to help you make some thought process about that sort of thing. And one of those is to forget about your animals as individual dollar per head prices. If you're going to be destocking and you're thinking about that destocking program and how can I get back in or whatever, I'll never be able to buy them back for what I sold them for, all of those sorts of things. Quite simply, just think about them as a lump sum of money. They could be $50,000 worth of animals, and all we're going to do is pick that $50,000 up and we're going to go and we're going to put it in the bank account. It's better to do that than have that $50,000 stay out there and become 30, 20, 15. Maybe fall off the end of the scales. Okay, when we come to put that $50,000 back out in the paddock, we don't think about it as how many animals we sold or what type or breed or whatever they were. It's just $50,000, and we're going to put that back out into the paddock as being the animals that are going to give us the best return on the grass that we have there in the paddock at that point in time. Not the grass we think that might be there in a few months' time. There's been quite a kick in the market a few weeks ago where people are going to want to get in, buy those animals, put them out in a paddock where there is no feed, and then watch that green tinge disappear. Okay, my father-in-law many years ago told me it's far better to pay more for an animal knowing you've got the grass to feed it than to take the gamble on it. Okay, we have to think a little bit more about the grass. The greater risk is that we're going to end up like that if we don't destock. It's going to continue on to stay dry. So we destock, we put money into our money inventory, and you all say that's easier said than done. Well, one of those thought processes is to think about them as a lump sum of money rather than these cows sold for $1,200, therefore I've got to go and buy them back at $1,200. You don't even have to buy cows back, you can buy heifers back, you can do something else. You can actually take the opportunity to, heaven forbid, improve your genetics, buy some animals from someone else that might even be a bit better. And David made some terrible comments about his wife. I've got a very good example of we sold some cows and destocked with them, and then about 8 months later we bought cows back, and beside the set of cattle yards there's a big pile of timber, and we're standing on my wife and I, Isabel, standing on the side of it there, and these cattle are coming off the truck and they're spilling out into the next yard, and she looked at them and she said, "Oh gee, they're a lot better than the ones you sold." Bitch, like damn. Kick a man when he's down. That's the terrible thing. So think about the mob as a lump sum of money. The key, of course, is to understand that we're actually grass producers, and it is how well we sell that grass that determines our profitability. Selling grass is how we profit, and what we decide to sell them to is the key to it. So the very simple mathematical formula that we use inside KLR is the sell minus the buy minus the cost of carry equals a profit of loss. And I want to touch on cost of carry because I don't think many people fully understand the cost of carry. The difference with the way we look at our cost of production, of course, is that we've got our direct costs, and we bring in a thing called the cost of time. Now that cost of time is a factor that you can determine on your own operation. So think about it like putting cattle on adjustment on somebody else's place. They're going to charge me so much per head per week to put them there. Make sense? So what we need to have on our own property is an adjustment rate, a cost of time, so that we know and we can compare different grades of animals or the cost of running that animal for a period of time. Now that cost of time can be that adjustment rate on your own property as one of the examples. In most forms of analysis, there's a few things we've been taught about profit drivers. In most forms of analysis, an animal putting on 1.5 kilos a day will make you more money than one putting on a kilo a day. Make sense? That's what we all think. How often have we had our animals, the best genetic ones, the ones that we spent more time in there, hit the market, specification, on time, only to have the tail waddle through a month or two later and make more money? Okay? And that is the reality of the market that we deal in. That is the reality of it. That works if, and only if, you sell all your animals on the one day or market remains constant. What's the one thing we know about market? It's constant, all right. It's constantly going up and it's constantly going down. It's constantly going all different ways. And we have to operate in that environment. So again, KLR in its simplest form is a decision-making tool. It's about taking the market data that we're given on a daily basis and making decisions about that, whether it's better to sell our grass to those animals or even keep that grass for something else, or sell those animals because they will no longer be making us money from that. So another example would be, if we looked at it, I've seen this happen time and time again with advisors saying, "Okay guys, there it is, there's your 400 kilo steer at $3, and yes, if you take it through to 450 kilos, it's $2.70, but you're going to get $2.70 on that extra 50 kilos. That's not how it works. They don't take that 30 cents off the last 50 kilos, they take that 30 cents off the whole 450 kilos. So an animal of 400 kilos at $3 is the same dollar per head price as a 451 at $2.70. You've put 50 kilos on that animal and have not been paid for it. Okay, you're getting the same money. That grass should have been sold and could have been sold to something else. Okay, so they're the sort of things that we have and we've been taught. Profit drivers, some of the profit drivers that we've been told that we have, things such as conception rates and growth rates and stocking rates, are actually not profit drivers. They're actually cost defibrillators. Okay, so you might have a cost of producing a weaner as a breeder scenario of say $350. Your increase in conception rate may reduce that cost from $350 to $340. But if your average price for weaners is $320, it still ain't going to help you a whole lot, is it? Okay? So what we need to start thinking about is they are not necessarily profit drivers, because what happens when we start talking about stocking rates, the unfortunate part of this industry is we are chock full of absolute bullshit. Got 1,000 cows. You know, the place can really only run 600, but I've got 1,000 cows. Okay, my steers do 1.5 on grass every day. Bullshit. Okay? Conception rate, 90%. You know, we know the herd average is closer to 60. Okay? Bullshit. I think what we need to do sometimes is just get a little bit more honest about these sort of things. Those things make people start to think, okay, I've got to hang on to these animals, hold them longer, run out of grass. I've come to the belief that in this game, that stocking rate, or carrying capacity is how many animals people think they can keep alive some of the time. So there's a place advertised in Tamworth the other day. A fellow rang me up. He said, I'm interested in that country. What do you think it could run? I said, maybe 450, 500 cows. Push it out, maybe 550. He said, it's been advertised for 1,200 cows. I said, go and ask the agent why that is. So he did, and he said, we've had a consultant do the figures on it. I said, well, get the name of the consultant. We can't divulge that information. So, a lot of times we run into problems with our grass is because we're running too many animals in the first place. That there is actually a problem out there is we're overstocking, and that's been because we've been told that the more animals on per hectare, more beef we produce per hectare, all this sort of stuff. They actually aren't profit drivers. Bud said when we first met him, in a lot of places you could halve the number of livestock and increase the profit. Now that's pretty dramatic, isn't it? Okay, but it's about dropping our numbers back so we can do a better job on what we have. And when we start thinking about the talks that we've had today about eating quality, it's also about the quality of what the animals are eating as well, okay, and the amount they have. So it's a very important part of it. I'm just going to duck through to a breeding operation, the cost of carry, because we tend to think it's all about trading. So the cost of carry is actually running a cow or a ewe through from weaning to weaning time, okay? What's it cost you to actually do that? Now, there's some important direct costs. What are they? Some people call out the direct costs for a breeding operation. Nobody knows? Okay? Well, I'll put them up there. Bull costs, drench, vaccinating, mustering, calf branding, interest. The fundamental one that I've never heard anyone call out is the one at the top, and that's replacements. The replacement females are one of the biggest costs, and then some people say, oh no, she didn't cost me anything, I bred her myself. So if we think about a breeding operation, you've got all those direct costs plus the adjustment rate that we're talking about on your own farm, the cost of time, times that 12-month period equals your cost of carry. So you have a cost of carry for your breeder up the top, and then you have a cost of carry moving your steer weaner through to sale, but you've also got your replacements. You've got to take it from a heifer when she's weaned through to when she's pregnant for the first time. You've then got to take her from there to her first calf, then to a second pregnancy, because in a beef operation, the second pregnancy is the hardest one to get. In sheep, not necessarily as so, but to take her through to that point in time, that is a 2-year period. There's a lot of costs involved there. She does owe you a little bit of something. So we worked with an operation up in the north. We ran this through and we found that their replacement cow coming into the herd, this is in the Gulf country, was $2,300. I don't know about you, but they might have been able to buy a Brahman cow for a little bit under that up in the Gulf country. So what we said to that operation is you would be better to sell your weaners, all your weaner heifers, and buy in replacement female pregnant cows. How can you do that? You're selling your weaner for this and you're buying your pregnant cow for that. And we said, well, you don't have to buy as many because you're only producing about 30% anyway, so you've only got to take the number there and use the cash, that lump sum thing, and buy those cows. So they didn't want to do it. In the end, the son-in-law prevailed on them to let him sell some of the heifers and take them through to and sell them and buy some pregnant animals. Where are you going to get them from? You can't buy them in this country. So he sold them and he went all the way next door and bought some and walked them home. Okay, so the next year they actually sold all their heifers and brought them in. Now, we're not saying that that's what you have to do. There's some operations that can very efficiently produce your replacement females. And again, we'll give you the tools to work out whether you're one of those operations. So knowing your cost of carry is a really, really important part of knowing whether to sell your grass to those particular animals or whether you sell it to something else. And again, when we're coming into a dry time, the most important part is being able to have the courage to destock. So my son came home, started working the operation. I said, mate, I'm putting you in charge of the livestock, their movements and whatever. And one of the key things, there's a couple of things I want you to take home about thinking about reading your livestock. There's plenty of technology out there, okay? There's a really, really good app. It's called www.yourcows@yourfarm.yourown-eyeballs, okay? It's about reading your livestock, getting them to tell you what's happening. So Locko came home and I said, listen, mate, I want 4 months of feed in front of me the whole time. He said, what happens when you get to the end of 4 months? I said, mate, you never get to the end of 4 months. There's always 4 months of feed in front. So I said, you're running out of feed. What do we need to do? We don't have 4 months. Oh, we need to sell some animals. Excellent. He said, how do I start to work out how much feed we've got in front of you? And I said, there's a few little things about reading livestock. The first one was when you put them into fresh country, watch what time they come into cud of a morning. If they come in nice and early, what's that telling you? Got a belly full, going to come in, lie down and cud. If they're coming in later and later in the day, what's that telling you? Starting to run out of feed. If we're starting to get on to 11 o'clock or so, those animals are really having to work hard to get a feed. If they are still grazing at that point in time, they've actually missed a graze. Because an animal will go out early in the morning, graze, come in, maybe have a drink, 7:30, 8 o'clock or thereabouts, have a bit of a rest, maybe cud. Now, it's not all of them will, but they'll cud. Then they'll go out and have another feed sort of late morning, then they'll come in and cud again. Then they'll go out in the afternoon, a shorter graze, cud again, and then as they go out in the evening, one of their major grazes. So they'll get 4. If 4 grazes, 2 of them short ones, the start of the day and the end of the day, longer grazes, and then longer cuds. So if they're coming in early in the day, then you know that they're getting feed, plenty of feed. If they're coming in later and later, they're starting to run out of feed. Pretty simple stuff. Okay, how do you know if it's good feed they're getting? What's the quality of that feed is how long those animals actually cud for. So if they come in and they cud for a short period of time, high utilisation through their system, pretty well up, out, grazing again. If they come in and cud early, but then they cud for a long period of time, that's telling you, yep, they've got a belly full, but it's crap, okay? And they've got to take a long time to break that down, and again, you're going to shorten up that next graze or even miss a graze. You're going to affect the performance of those animals. So what he was able to do is look at that and say, okay, the animals are starting to come in later and later in the day. They're about due for a move into another paddock. So it's pretty simple stuff, isn't it? So again, he's got to do a bit of an estimate of how many days or how long those animals are going to be there. Then he's going to compare that with actually what happened and then think out over the next amount of paddocks that he has and does he have enough feed ahead of them based on that. So there's some very key indicators that we can use about watching and reading our animals. When they come into cud, how long they cud for are probably the most important things that you can use to take home with you from today, just being able to read your animals and give you a little bit more. So in the simplest form, KLR is a decision-making tool. It's about understanding your grass, understanding your animals, working out what animals in your inventory are the best animals to be selling grass to. Therefore, when you come to destock, which animals are the best ones to go out the door, take that lump sum of money, put it in the bank account, and then move it back out into the paddock at a later point in time. The key, of course, is people say to me, well, we can't all destock. But if we start out not running too many animals in the first place, if we're monitoring our grass performance and destocking slowly over time, then we're just going to be in that much better fettle going forward. And some of the profit drivers that we have been actually told are profit drivers are really just cost defibrillators. They're only ones that are having some impact on your cost of production, not your true profitability. And that's the most important thing we need to understand. And again, I'd like to congratulate finally the local land services. They've done an amazing job for today. They also do an amazing job for us as producers. I mean, the people that I've dealt with, Albert Mullen, we've got Lyndall Stone as the vet who's come out. I'm a bit concerned that a rough old mate of mine, Andrew Hodgson, is involved in it now. That could lower the tone of things a little bit. But they do a great job. And years ago, when I came out of school, we had the Department of Ag, and somehow the government just carved the heart out of it, just cut the costs. We lost some terrific extension people that all went off into that world of consulting. And I think the LLS is actually bringing some of that back to us, some terrific support. So thank you to the LLS. Thank you for putting this on, and thank you for the support you give our industry. Thank you very much.